Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Dr. Dowd, a prevention advocate, and it's Friday. So I hope this broadcast today finds you doing well. Again, it's Friday, and so on Friday we do acknowledge nuggets. And so let's dive right in. And so today's acknowledge nugget is about pain management. Okay, and it's essentially about acknowledging your pain. And so let's talk about it. Okay, and so how do you manage pain? Are you managing your pain, or are you letting your pain master you? Okay, and so we all go through pain as human beings, right? Because it's a part of life. Everything is not always hunky dory. Um, everything is not always comfortable. Everything is not always joyous, right? We have ups and downs. Yeah, the Bible says we're gonna have some trials and tribulations, right? We're gonna have some things that come up in life that are not so, um joyous. Again, they're not so, happy. We're gonna, have some, some things that happen. But I want you to be mindful today that you shouldn't always be in pain, right? So yes, you may experience pain. And so, and again, it's various forms. And so pain is not always, catastrophic events. It's not always, something that's a part of, something, very, very violent or detrimental. But sometimes, you can experience pain with, some subtle things, like having to transition and, move away, or you have to leave one job and go to another, or, a breakup, or friendship, or, you know, a disappointment, someone promised you something, but they didn't deliver. And, that hurt you, right? Hurt your feelings. Sometimes, our feelings get hurt. And so just wanted you to be, aware that, not saying pain is a bad thing, because it's not. I'm an advocate that pain has purpose. And a lot of times, when we go through pain, it's an opportunity to, say, okay, why has this happened? Why did it happen? And what can I change? What can I do different? What can I learn from this? Where can I grow from this? What can, how can I change my perspective? How can I change my part in me experiencing pain? Okay. And so, I'm a big advocate of balance and boundaries. Okay. And so again, when pain happens to us, it's actually a warning and an indicator that we need to give something our undivided attention. And so how many times have you went along in life and you haven't given your pain your undivided attention? You just keep going. You mask it. We use these maladaptive, coping mechanisms. And well, maladaptive mean you using something to band-aid an issue, and it's divisive. It's not healthy, right? It's not good. It's a bad habit. You get into the bad routine of, this is how I manage pain. Okay, so I'm be a little gonna get into it a little rough today. And so sometimes, we pick up substance. We pick up things. We pick, and it's not, and it's not always just drugs and alcohol that people use to manage pain. Sometimes it can be, people pleasing. Sometimes it could be food, certain foods and sweets and stuff. I'm gonna be honest, transparent moment. One of the things that I used to use to kind of cope with pain and stress, and when my feelings was hurt, I used to like sugar. So I'm going to get some cakes, some cookies, some pies, and so everybody's, a coping mechanism and maladaptive coping mechanisms look different. Okay, but it's always an opportunity that when you know that there is a problem, when you know that there's something that needs to shift and change, you make that change. Okay, and so we all been there. If you're a human being and you have lived and walked this road in life, you've been through some pain. You have and likely you have adapted, some behaviors, some mindsets, some ideologies and some beliefs to kind of cope with your pain, but you still in pain. And so today, is a day that I wanted, wanted to talk about this to encourage you to master your pain. Okay, you put your pain in its proper place, and a lot of times that is just acknowledging that whatever it was, it hurt it. Right, it hurt your feelings. It made you feel away. Right, giving it complete undivided attention, and then do the work. Okay, and so we can mask the pain, we can, but we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to look at the man in the mirror. We have to sometimes shut all the other noise out. Right, it's easy to make excuses. It's easy to blame other people. It's easy to say it's such and such fault, and all that has its proper place. And again, I never make an excuse for people who don't do right. Right, we all have encountered people in life at some point in our life that don't do right. Okay, but again, you don't give them power. You know what I'm saying? You don't give them power over your pain. You don't give them power over your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings. You don't give people your power. Right, and so that's why it's so important to acknowledge things, identify them, give them a name, and address them, and deal with it. Right, and so again, I'm never an advocate that it's okay for people to do you wrong. No, 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 no. That is never what Dr. Dow is saying. But I'm saying is set some boundaries, set some balance. Sometimes again, you have to address people, but I am an advocate that you address them when you have done the work. Right, when you have taken assessment, you don't checked yourself. How they say sometimes you got to wait till the smoke clear. Because a lot of times when emotions are raw and we hurt, what comes up comes out. And then sometimes that doesn't not help the situation. It actually fans the fire. And one thing for sure is you cannot fight fire with fire. Fire needs some water. And so even with pain management, you can't fight pain with fire. You need some water. You need something else. Okay, and so I just want you to be mindful of that. Give this some thought. And again, I'm not always talking about just catastrophic and such drastic things, but I'm talking about those little things that turn into big things because we tend to mask it. And it hurt, it hurt our feelings. We were disappointed. Somebody again, unmet expectation, or even unmeaningful and unfulfilling expectations, because sometimes we allow, ourselves to expect too much of others. Okay. And at the same time, we allow others to expect too much of us. And so again, pain has different forms. It has different variables. It has different factors. And I'm talking about today, all of it, putting it all in perspective. And again, making sure that your pain is not mastering you, but you are mastering your pain. And so again, that does mean undivided attention. You got to give it some thought. You got to look over some things. You got to ask yourself some of these tough questions. And I left them in the comment section. You got to ask yourself some of these tough questions. Okay. And sometimes, really the warning signs are blaring us right in our face. We just keep overlooking them. We keep making excuses for them. We keep ignoring them, because a lot of times when our pain is mastering us, it's mastering a lot of other places in our lives. And we show up, with our pain. Right? When we open up our mouth, it's not our authentic self speaking. It's our pain is speaking. When we respond to people, we're not responding from a sober place. We responding out of our pain. So you'd be surprised how this has a trickle down effect. And that's why it's so important that we keep our mental health in check. Okay. And again, it's not that everybody has mental illness. No, everybody has mental health. And the important part is keeping your mental health healthy so it does not lead to mental illness. And if you do have mental illness, hey, you still somebody. It's okay. It's making sure that you have the right proper professional help, and you seek it. I'm a big advocate. If you know me by now, I'm a big advocate against stereotypes and stigmas, because we don't have time for that. We got one life to live, right? And God, said we should be living it to the fullest, abundantly. And so, and how can we do that if we not managing our pain? How can we do that if we're not being honest about our, these raw emotions and feelings that may be causing us pain? How can we do that if we continue to mask our pain and we continue to take on these, adverse and detrimental habits that's caused more pain? And one thing for sure, I do know that if you don't handle your pain will handle you. If you don't handle the things that in life that are that have caused you some type of adversity, has caused you some type of challenge, you know the rest, right? You're going to continue to see it. It becomes cycle. It becomes, a trickle down effect. And so I really, really want us all to be mindful of pain management. And again, ask yourself this critical question: how are you managing your pain? Sometimes, it's layered. And that's why you always hear me say assess, because you have to take it layer by layer. You have to take it step by step, one step at a time. It's, you can't, a lot of times you can't do it all in one, but it does take action. It does just take that one step. Start with this one thing, and pull back the layers and get to the root, because a lot of times, even in our behaviors, that's the fruit. That's the fruit of something, but you got to get to the root of it. You got to get a root. Like you acting cray all the time. You impulsive. You sporadic. You on edge. You crashing out. Don't nobody know who gonna show up when you show up. They don't know what version of themselves they gonna get. And even if you see this going on in other people, be mindful. Okay. Be mindful before you engage. Be mindful. And so I am a big advocate of, it's easy to see what's going on in other people's lives. True that. It is. But the biggest thing is, looking at dealing with the man in the mirror, making sure that, again, you're showing up as your true authentic self, and you are not, showing up with your pain. You're not, and again, sometimes, we think we had well, but one thing I remember growing up, that a lot of the elders in my community used to remind me and my peers, because we thought, we were smart, right? I know many can attest to that if you are, seasoned, and even some youth, you can attest to this. You probably heard your grandparents or somebody say, you can fool people some of the times, but you can't fool people all the time. And so even as I have grown up to understand and to realize that resonates in so many things that we do with our life, and in life, and how we show up, and how we living, and so why would we want to fool people? Because the one thing for sure is, if you're trying to fool people, you really fooling yourself, because your life matters, right? Right? Okay. Yeah, we only get one. We on borrowed time, and we don't have no time to waste. And so take that into this weekend, and go through the questions and ask yourself, how are you managing your pain, and manage it well. If you need professional help, because sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. We sometimes we need help. Another transparent moment. There was some years ago, I needed some help. To help manage some pain. And I'm so glad that I took the initiative, right? Because wasn't nobody going to do it for me. And again, if I wouldn't have had to do my part, if I wouldn't have went and got some help, above all, again, one of my strategies is prayer, but also get some professional help that was tailor fit to what I needed it for. I wouldn't be sitting here before you today as Dr. Dow, the prevention advocate. And so again, we are all human beings, regardless of titles, regardless of positions, regardless of walks of life. We're all human. We all go through pain. We all have experienced some type of pain. But the important key is acknowledging it for what it is and then doing the work. Okay? That's it for today. Acknowledge Nugget again, pain management. Make sure you're managing yours well. Make sure you have a healthy approach. And if perhaps anything resonated with you that I've said today, and again, you're not handling it well, I encourage you to get some help. Right? Get some help. It's okay. It's okay because we all need help. We're not islands. All right. Until next week, have yourself an amazing and a great weekend. Be safe and chat soon.